Well, hello. I am Lynn King Smith of TicketForce, and I'm pleased today to welcome you to this episode. Actually, I'm looking at it written down as Listen at the Hub, but we have not decided that that's what it's going to be. But this is our first webinar presented by TicketForce that we're also going to make available next month as a podcast. So this is actually a pre-recorded broadcast, if you're listening today, that we recorded earlier this week. Now, we're going to continue to produce industry-relative episodes as part of the Hub, which is our place for ticketing professionals that we're creating and launching this summer, where you can learn, discuss, and explore ideas in our fast-changing market. So I am here today as a ticketing provider for venues and promoters across North America, and I've asked a couple guys to join me, two panelists today, to bring different perspectives to our discussion today. So first we have Jay Cobb. He's here from Ticket Evolution, and that's described as a ticket API and marketplace that connects sellers to fans, buyers to sellers, and everyone in between. Jay and I legitimately met on Twitter, right, Jay? I think where we frequently comment and discuss everything ticketing, and he's often the first one I turn to when I need to buy or sell tickets. So welcome, Jay, and thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And by disclosure, we are based in Arizona here, and even though I did my best to get Canadian representation, that didn't work out due to some schedules, and contacted people on a national level as well. And so now this is our Arizona-based discussion, which is fine. It will translate fantastically nationwide, but I really appreciate you guys making the time. I also have here today David Cruz, who's the theatrical venues manager at the City of Phoenix, which includes the Orpheum Theater, where they frequently host major concerts and events. David works there with multiple artists and promoters. He also serves a vast customer base across the state coming in to see that at those beautiful venues there. And in full disclosure as well, the City of Phoenix is a current TicketForce client. So David, thanks for being here. We know you're really busy too, and it's great to have you on today.
It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Thank you. So we're just going to be real informal today and have a discussion because we're not recording live. There's no time for questions. But if you do have any questions that come up when you're listening, please just give us a holler. You can easily probably best reach us on our social channels and just tag TicketForce and we'll get back to you. So to get us started today, I'm going to do a little brief introduction of several things that are happening in regards to new ticketing legislation that's hitting both the U.S. and Canada. And I want to have a discussion around how this will affect all stakeholders in live entertainment. So represented here today, as far as stakeholders, David's coming in from the venue side, which are huge stakeholders. You can have events without venues, including a field at a festival. It's still a venue. You got to have a place with a permit to have that. So venues are massive stakeholders, but also, like I said, David, you're serving the ticket buyer, the end user. You hear from them directly and service them directly, and then you're kind of middle guy there working with artist management and promoters. So that's your world. And representing, and I'm here to represent the primary ticketing market, and Jay with what we call the secondary market, both of us admittedly on the dark side of entertainment, Jay, right?
A little bit.
So, yeah, a little bit, but we're real nice people, trust me. So I want to start with what we know, and then we'll get into some questions and discussion, but I just want to get everybody on the framework for the listeners today. That ticketing is largely an unregulated industry. So from refund policies, large mergers controlling every facet of the live event, it's been fairly hands-off for years. And yes, more people are finding their way to live events every year, but everybody from both the ticket buyer and the artist, pretty much everybody in the market has raised the call for some type of what you might call fair pricing, whether it's in the face value of the ticket or the fee structure that gets attacked all the time. And unlike the airlines who have to disclose the full price of ticket with the fees now, ticket buyers are often faced with kind of the surprise of multiple fees only after they begin at checkout. So they're running around a little pissed off. And we add to that in ticketing in general, we have no refund policies unless an event is canceled. So if something changes for you, we just say, sorry, but find another way, enter J to get rid of that ticket. And those are nearly unique to our market. And again, the airlines do share that with us. I do make that reference a lot, but I'm remembering the days of when you could sell ticket on Craigslist. You guys are old enough to remember that?
Of course.
I used to sell
an airline ticket
when I was a broker.
Right? Yeah, it's like round trip ticket to Florida, $200, and you could just buy it. Taylor, who's monitoring, is looking shocked right now, so we know she didn't ever experience that. So the U.S. government's done a couple things to kind of just give a nod that they're listening to these concerns. They passed the 2016 BOTS Act, which we all just love that name, which stands for Better Online Ticket Sales. And that makes it illegal to circumvent a security measure, access control system, or other technological control or measure on an internet website or online service that is used by the ticket issuer. So that's 2016 BOTS Act. Secondly, the FTC in the U.S. set up a website for comments, and they plan to host a public workshop in D.C. next week on June 11th to listen to those concerns. There are more than you could read in probably a week if you jump on that riveting website. And then finally, the Government Accountability Office, or the GAO, released a study called Event Tickets, Market Characteristics and Consumer Protection Issues, where they looked at ticket pricing, resale prices, and fees. So true government fashion, they did a study, and no action that we know of has come out of that yet. Canada has been a bit more aggressive, and just this year even, in 2 provinces, both British Columbia and Ontario, there are now bills that look like they're going to pass without issue, which seek to place more responsibility on the primary providers, that's me, to ensure that no unfair practices are used in ticket sales. Well, that's no small order there. And then on secondary sellers, that's Jay, to guarantee refunds if an event cancels, which he and the other good ones already do, or if they discover that a seller's ticket is fraudulent. So keep in mind there's a lot of bad players, and for Jay and I, we are then the instruments to be bypassed or beaten. We were talking a little bit before we started record where what David runs into, and we'll catch up with this a lot, is fake sites being put up to look like or mirror his website so that people are tricked into buying tickets that are not going to get you in the door. So we have to continually be putting measures in place to try to prevent the bad guys from doing what they're going to do. And at the same time, we take the blame when unsuspecting or unwise customers are ripped off. So all 3 of us can get thrown under the bus. So did I get that right, you guys?
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. I think that there's a lot going on, looking forward. And I'm not so optimistic that the United States is going to follow Canada's lead. But we'll see where that goes, I guess, during this discussion, right?
Yep, we will. I'm sure that they'll probably listen to this panel and, wake up and make some changes. So, but, really the folks listening today, I assume are, for the most part, going to be people out of the venue and promoter world, because that is my client base that mostly logs on. But it is of note that I'm the lone primary ticket provider on the panel today. I did have a lot of scheduling issues with folks. And so some of them actually, though, were actually wary of pissing people off because they said, hey, look, I got a lot of stakeholders and I don't really want to put myself in that position. So again, I guess we're sticking our necks out there, but I appreciate you guys taking the time. And that is the end of my Matto monologue to get us started. So let's get to it. I'm going to throw some questions out and we'll just have free-flowing discussion. And we'll let that run right up to about the top of the hour. So I'd love to hear from you guys on what is broken in the ticketing food chain, from artists, promoters, venues, primary and secondary ticketing, patrons. Where are things not working?
You want to kick that off, Jay?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to go through a short list I have here. I mean, I think the biggest and most obvious one is pricing of tickets on the primary market is almost always too low. That's why there is a secondary market.
Right.
There's not enough pricing tiers within a venue. You'd look at, most venues, there might be, for a concert, might be 5 or 6 pricing tiers. For season tickets at a sporting team, usually a few more than that. But, one of the things the secondary market provides is a whole lot more pricing tiers so that someone who is very budget conscious is able to pick, a seat that matches the amount of money they're willing to spend. I know Ticketmaster has made a big effort to try to, quote, teach their artists to price their tickets better, but artists are still really afraid to price their tickets at market value because they don't want to look like they're being greedy. But in reality, most artists should be charging $400 or $500 or more for front row tickets. They just don't want to look bad for doing it. So one of the things they do is they throw in a poster or a fake laminate or just some other junk to justify, then selling that at market price as a, quote, platinum ticket.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of problems in the ticket industry come from pricing just not being correct right out of the gate.
Yeah. We do have a lot of those conversations at conferences. I'm not sure people are listening. I mean, David, you don't have a ton to say, right? When they're coming into you, he's right. The artist/promoter is doing the dictating on how that thing is priced.
I mean, it depends on the promoter. Some of them will work, a little more closely with me, where I'll take a look at the offer before it goes out. And, if I see anything that's glowing, that really should be changed, I'll throw it out there. But yeah, it's ultimately the promoter making those decisions of what goes on that offer to the artist, and where that back end comes in to see if they're going to get it as opposed to another promoter. And I agree and disagree with a little bit of what Jay said, because yes, they may be wrong on the pricing thing, but they're also, you have to be careful when trying to fill the venue of where is that flip between the diehard fan and the casual entertainment goer who, might not be the biggest fan, but is going to be the person that is filling the rest of the venue. So yeah, the tiers have to be there to take you down to that casual fan, but I've seen it both ways where, the promoter is sort of pricing the event out where you're not, you're always going to sell those 100, 200 VIP tickets up front with all the junk added in. Those are always going to go. The problem is the 400 seats in the back of the room or the 500 seats in the middle of the room where you're trying to pull somebody in that's like, yeah, I wouldn't mind that. But, Lynn, you've talked a lot about the, going to see live entertainment has sort of become a luxury as opposed to something that everybody has access to. And I think that, if it's looking to go that way where it's, paying the higher ticket price, you're really taking away, the larger chunk of the population who's just not going to be able to go in for live entertainment anymore.
Jay, so do those middle seats that David's got sitting there in his venue, they're not necessarily the ones that come over to your side or to your platform, right? The kind of the middle slush. But by the same token, I would guess that the secondary market has better data, perhaps, on what people are willing to pay in different levels because you guys see it.
Oh, definitely. The secondary market, we're the ones who actually have the market demand data, and that's why 10 years ago Ticketmaster bought Tickets Now for $265 million. They wanted to be able to get that data and to stop fighting with ticket brokers and learn how to do what they do.
Yeah. Are they doing it though?
It really depends on both the venue and the event as to where the demand is going to be for the seats. Some shows are going to sell out. Some it might be a struggle. So I definitely understand there's a balance there and pricing the seats correctly, but that's just something that I think the primary needs to get better and better at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we have, the capabilities have gotten easier over on our side of the provider level of being able to get very granular. And I think we do see a lot where we sort of go into P1, P2, P3 mode, and we sort of work on, I see a lot of folks kind of work on autopilot. And we've got a lot of promoters that have been doing this for a long time. And, thinking about how many price levels you could actually do and could really give people a lot of opportunity, whether that means some of your middle stuff is selling for a little higher because it's a little better than you think it is, and maybe there's an entry point that's lower, that we don't think about sometimes.
I agree with that, and I think that the country music industry is a big, that's a glowing sort of market, because you have these artists specific in the country world where there isn't a ton of middle ground. They're playing in a bar and then they're opening for Kenny Chesney at a stadium. There isn't this sort of lower middle market for most of the country acts that they blow up and all of a sudden they're in arenas and stadiums. But they still have this mentality of, no, my fans pay $20 a ticket. And so I do agree there. But I think that that's where the tiers come in. But it's a matter of convincing a promoter who's out there buying the show that they have to put those top ticket prices, in the hundreds and hundreds of dollars in there, because people are going to buy them. And but then it's got to work its way down to that casual fan so that they're not pricing out their fan base. It's a tough pickle to land in, for sure, on the promoter side and the artist side.
Yep. So pricing, obviously, we've had webinars alone just on that issue. We talk about it all the time. I think getting the two worlds to communicate better makes a lot of sense. What else? Back to the question, is not working in the world of ticketing?
Well, I think that on my side of the world, 2 points. One, on the website thing, you have to be really proactive as a venue to keep your audience informed and the casual, just in town or new to your venue, informed that they are buying tickets from the correct place. We have several sites here in the Phoenix area that it looks like a legitimate site. It's got the photos, it's got our name, and if you were just the casual goer, you went to that website, you would think you were on our site. And those are the messages that I get more than anything else from the patron, is I paid $750 for this ticket, and my response is, not from us, you didn't.
Right. Right. Or even from a legitimate reseller. Yeah. I'm mystified by that, because we were having actually a conversation in the lunchroom yesterday, and we were saying, why isn't this happening in other markets? Because patrons, when they're buying other things, you get shade thrown on you if you're stupid enough to make a purchase for something that you thought was on Amazon and it never got shipped to you. I mean, I'm trying to think of another industry where people are making those types of buying errors. You just don't see it that much. I mean, I guess there's kind of phishing sites out there in other markets, but Any thoughts, Jay? You've been on the web and expert for years. Why in this market are people maybe more than others, or am I missing it? Why are they so easily fooled? It just seems like our buyers are not terribly savvy, but this is one of the number one things that I keep hearing from my clients is, how can I help this? And I'm like, I don't know, you got to make people smarter. I mean, and that's why in ticketing, or do we have people who don't know how to check the validity of a site they're buying on?
It's because there is no way to authenticate. If someone's trying to buy from the primary only, there is no verified blue check to indicate like this is the official box office. And I know there are affiliates of some marketplaces out there who buy domain names such as ComericaTheaterBoxOffice.com, and then they put up the picture of Comerica Theater and try to look like they are the official site. I think that's a horrible practice.
Right.
Just, like, we don't allow anybody on our platform to use our APIs that's doing anything like that. But it's just, there's no way for people to verify. There's, I guess maybe somebody could try to launch Amazon with, slightly misspelled and hope they would catch a sucker and make the site look like it. But on the web with other industries, you generally know the site. You know that you're going to bestbuy.com or amazon.com or whatever. But interestingly that you mentioned Amazon, because I have seen a similar thing on Amazon before, where I was purchasing a product for my father and I thought, oh, well, let me just see if I can order this on Amazon instead of direct from the website that was selling it. And I found it on Amazon, but it was twice the price. And I did a little research on that seller, and that seller, that's all they do is they list items for double the price, and I guess they must just fulfill them later, figuring, well, there's no official person selling on Amazon. I'm going to capture that market that doesn't bother to look anywhere else.
Oh, wow. And so they're probably just buying the item as they need it and charging twice as much. They're not even holding inventory. Yeah, I got to tell you, I'm a little wary sometimes of the sellers on there. And I do kind of check it out. In fact, I don't like on Amazon if I see other sellers and I have to take a long time and I'll look and it's like, this is from all the way across the ocean and I don't need that for a pair of socks, which is probably where they're coming from anyway. But
the other thing that customers don't know is, they might be intending to go to, the Orpheum Theater's official website to buy tickets. And if they go there, they might not find what they're looking for. Maybe they are willing to spend money to sit in the first 5 rows, and those are already sold out. So when they land on another website, whether that's an affiliate website, that's StubHub, or any number of ticketing websites out there, they might find the seats that they want, at a marked up resale price. And if that's the seats they want and that's a price they're willing to pay, there's nothing wrong with them purchasing that. I just don't think you see a lot of instances where people are buying stuff that's available at the box office, from a website. Now certainly maybe they thought that was their only choice, but it's definitely a problem that I wish we could solve by having some way to identify, the official websites. I think the best way is for the secondary market to make sure that they are not working with affiliates and websites that are using those deceptive tactics like that. And I know that one big marketplace competitor of mine recently, in the last few years, got rid of a whole lot of those affiliates who were doing, shady domain names and things like that. So it's one of those things that the secondary market needs to police itself better on, and the marketplaces who are allowing that, shame on them.
Yeah. David, what were you going to say?
Well, yeah, I don't disagree, that people are going to the secondary market to find the tickets they want, but those aren't the people that are complaining, on a weekly basis. It's the people that are being duped by it, unfortunately. I think the people that are looking for the tickets they want and are willing to pay for it, I think that's how the secondary, ticket market thrives. And I don't see an issue with that. But it is that, the more dishonest practice of, masquerading as this is the place to buy tickets when there's still tickets available at the box office that are in the same section that are, you know, a third the price.
Part of the
It's
reason
really
they feel
just
duped
an
is
online fraud.
because the face value is printed on the ticket. And,
Yeah.
you know, you sell somebody a ticket for $300 and they get it and it says $87.50. They suddenly feel like they were ripped off. And, you know, they knew that they were paying $300 and they were comfortable with that at the time they clicked purchase. But then because it has a different price tag on it, they now feel duped. It's kind of the same as if you were on an airplane and you paid $400 for your round trip ticket, and the person next to you, you know, you talk to them and they said, "Oh, I got a $99 special." You would be like, "Oh, crap! I should have got that deal." You know,
but it's not printed on your ticket. Nobody knows. You're not really, and sometimes I forget what I paid. I just know, you know, I got the seat I wanted and I'm going when I wanted, and I may not even remember unless I was sitting there looking at my ticket going, damn, I paid $800 for this, you know?
Yeah. And as the primary moves to more and more dynamic pricing, which they should, you know, I'm hoping that we'll see those face values disappear off of tickets. That will make everybody a little bit better. You know, I think there are some places where it's still required by law, but I could tell you that, like, when Ticketmaster on their TM Plus platform resells a ticket, you know, shockingly the face value disappears on that reissued ticket.
Yeah, that is shocking. So, well, you know, and that again, we're talking about online fraud, which really is, at the end of the day, comes back to parties much bigger than us. You know, the FTC has to figure out a way to monitor that and catch these guys when you're talking about those fake sites that are being put up. I would think that the domain name issuers should be very careful about what they issue on things that are similar to sites but not quite. And that's, you know, that's beyond all of us here, for sure. And so pricing issues, and, you know, really clear what's going on online, and kind of just recognizing that there's fraud there. And, you know, I'm asked continually, how do I educate my buyers? And I don't know anything to tell folks other than what we're telling them. A verified site would be fantastic route to go, but that would need to be fairly stringent process or people would copy that. So what if ticketing is fair, you know, I in a recent blog I wrote, I talked a little bit about when Colangelo came into town, with one of his goals into Phoenix here with baseball was to make it be so that everybody could afford to go. So I don't know how many price levels they had at that time, Jay, in reference to yours, probably a lot, but they had one very small section, obviously way up in the nosebleed, where you could buy a baseball ticket for $1. So it's nothing that I would want to do, you know, is go up there and sit on the third baseline in the third deck. But the fact was it gave access to folks at an entry point that was pretty cool, I thought. And I don't think you can get in the ballparks anywhere, I don't know, for $1, which basically makes it available for anybody. Is it even possible around that concept of making ticketing fair? We'll probably get into a pricing discussion again here. But is it possible, or are we turning, you know, as entertainment a luxury item?
Yeah, I mean, how would you define fair?
Yeah, that's the question of the hour. You know, I guess if it becomes something, and I don't think it will, but, you know, the concern would be, does it get to a point where the only people that can afford to get to events are upper middle class? You know, it's kind of like, we have great food available to us and really high quality produce and organic foods, but not everybody can afford it. So then, you know, you're stuck buying crappy food if your income doesn't allow you. So at what point is entertainment headed towards a luxury ticket item, or are we still going to have events where people can have an access point into plenty of stuff at $10 or $15?
I think ticketing is absolutely, you know, it's a luxury / discretionary income item. It's, you know, it's not food, water, or shelter. It's not a right. It's a privilege. And,
right.
You know, venues and artists could certainly make efforts to try and make some tickets available to people with lesser incomes, but I don't know that that's the way things need to be. You know, I'd love to drive a Ferrari, but guess what? They're out of my price range. So,
Right.
you know,
Yep.
should I go argue that the auto industry should make all cars available to me at what I can afford?
Absolutely. Give me a Lamborghini at a Toyota price. You know, we hear from those folks all the time as well. And what about fees as well? David, you're in a setting where you have some control, but not a ton over what gets passed on to the buyer. Where do fees? That's probably one of your top buyer complaints. I don't know, or if yours are managed.
That would be,
well.
100%. That would be complaint number one. I deal with it on social media all the time. As soon as we put something on sale, you know, there's somebody saying, "Oh, I tried to buy a $37.50 ticket, and the ticket fees were this," and it's like, you know, you want to respond like, "Sorry, you know, we do have a business here as well."
Right.
And you know, and that I think is always going to be an issue on the primary ticket side, is that, you know, the general ticket buyer doesn't understand how a venue makes its money. You know, that the venue is not walking away on a concert with the lion's share of the money that's being made, you know, and that money has to be made to pay for that person who's answering the phone if you call for tickets, or the one that's sitting in the box office, or, you know, the guy who's cleaning the building afterwards. You know, the venue has to make money to be able to operate. I talk about this a lot just in general, that, you know, running a venue, you're running a retail institution. You know, you're buying a product, the talent, at a low price and reselling it to the customer, the audience, at a higher price. That has to make money. You know, that's, or it's the essence of, you know, a failing business. Like, you have to make money in doing that. You know, and certainly there's a balance, which I think goes to one of my other points on the secondary market, is that, you know, we find ourselves on a sold out show with 110 empty seats because the secondary market wasn't able to unload, you know, what they had purchased. And it's interesting when that happens, because you go, oh, well, the demand was there to sell the tickets, but not enough to sell them at the higher price. And you're left now as the venue with empty seats that aren't there buying drinks, that aren't buying merch, that aren't buying all of the ancillary revenue stuff that leads a venue to make money. And that, you know, I think the fees on the secondary market tend to be higher than on the primary market. And so that's a turnoff for people as well when they go to the secondary market. And again, I'm talking about your fringe buyer. I'm not talking about your diehard. We know that the diehards are going to pay it. I pay it. You know, we're going to this conference in Philadelphia in a month. And, you know, as soon as that conference ends, I'm on a train to New York, and I bought my tickets on the secondary market to see a preview of Moulin Rouge, you know, so.
Right.
But again, you know, there's your luxury purchase. I'm in a position where I can afford to do that, you know.
Right.
And I do think that in talking about fare and luxury items, the Broadway show is a shining example of that as well. You know, when I was younger, you could go to a Broadway show for $35 or $40, and now you want to sit in a good seat, it's $238 out of the gate. You know, as soon as the tickets go on sale, let alone, you know, the dynamic pricing structure and all of these other things where those tickets are going to go up and up and up. And then you hit the secondary market and you're paying $400 or $500 for those same tickets. So
yeah, I mean, maybe
you know,
in your example of David of saying how people, you've got that 100 tickets maybe that were snapped up by somebody and then trying to unload them on secondary not working. Maybe they wouldn't have sold to your audience anyway. Maybe somebody just misguessed at
Sure.
at the demand for that show, right? I mean,
Yeah, you could almost guarantee that those tickets were priced under face value as the event got close.
yeah, there you go. True.
And I would like to say that not to attack anybody on the panel here, but when the primary markets talk about the fees and that they hate the complaints about the fees, I find it very disingenuous, because the primary market could just tell the promoters and artists, we're pricing your tickets all in, period, no discussion. But yet, no primary ticketer that I know of has taken that stand and said,
Like
we are
demanded
only going
that,
to show the final price.
We run into, maybe we'll just make the promoters the bad guys today because they're not on the phone, but that's where we would run into the struggle on that, because we certainly have the capability to do that, and can offer to do that. But oftentimes, well, I'll be blunt since there's no promoters on the phone. But oftentimes if we do that, they have difficulty then looking at the revenue that they're not getting. And so, if they're giving you a ticket for $50 and all out with facility and everything, you're like at 62, reporting wise, we've got to pull that all back out again. And again, we can do that. But it doesn't necessarily do it on every single report. So based on what they're looking at, they have trouble looking at numbers that they're not going to get, because for some reason they don't really often care that David has fees to pay in his building. They're not having to pay the cleaners or, the box office people. That's what I run into. I don't know about you, David. I agree, Jay. I like, all-in pricing, and I think it pisses people off a lot less, but I think the buildings would be happy to do it if the promoters weren't opposed. But what's your take on that, David?
Well, I think that it's not just the promoters that are opposed to it. The artists are opposed to it. The artists.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
That's the percentage on it. They want to see it as, there's even times where that facility fee will get buried in it, but only the facility fee, because they don't want to see the ticket go above X amount of dollars. That's where the artist
so if I'm
is selling
Taylor Swift, I didn't. Yeah, yep, you're right. It's both of them.
Yeah, and
that's our challenge.
And
somebody needs to take the stand with that. And for the record, I'd love to see the secondary get rid of fees as well. I think it's absolute bullshit the way the secondary market prices their tickets, where many marketplaces or websites will take the wholesale price from a broker, mark it down, and then slap you with a 28% quote service fee once you've filled out every bit of information. I'd love to see us get away from that.
That happened to me.
I don't think that'll happen. I mean, I don't know if you guys follow when StubHub tried that a couple years ago. It really hurt their financials, cost the CEO his job. It's just one of those things of it should happen. I just don't know how it ever will, unless it's that's one of the few things that would need to be mandated by a law.
That might be the only way that is solved, because we can all say whatever we want, but at the end of the day, if that artist wants to say, you could get into my show for $50 and fees and everything else on top of that, you're at 70, they're the ones really that it's falling back on. So it may be that it has to get mandated, so that, the government takes the fall rather than everybody else.
We see it in other industries too. I just was in San Diego and paid a $30 quote destination fee, $30 per day.
It's true. Hotels are the worst.
Resort fees.
Yep.
It's just the way of tacking on additional profit, and it's ticketing is not the only industry that does it.
We are not. It's very true, and it would have to be a unified front going into, like, speaking for myself, we're in a very competitive market, for my size venues that I have here at the city, and it would have to be all in from everybody in the valley to say, we're going to put the prices all in,
Right.
No,
Right.
everything's buried in the ticket price, because if I were to ask that, forget it. That show's going somewhere else. There's no way that as a venue I would be able to demand that unless every venue was demanding that, because I would just lose the show.
And I think that's where we run into some trouble is we fight each other in the industry. Primary fights secondary, venues fight promoters, all of it is, rather than kind of looking at, and it's a big ticket. I don't know how it's going to happen, but the industry looking at things as what's best for the industry as a whole, and everybody's sort of getting on the same page. That's a pipe dream, I'm sure. But that is where, because we have so many players, which everybody does, hotels, travel, airlines, all of that have multiple players as well. But it's a little out of control right now, honestly. So maybe they're going to try to loop in a little, but highly competitive at every front, and David, even you, you probably have, 10 legitimate, if not 15 of providers you can choose to do a lot of different things for you, as well as ticketing. So everybody's always working hard just to stay in the game. And at the end of the day, that adds a lot of crap to the market for sure. So we talked a little bit about responsibility on the ticket buyers already, and we just started to touch on legislation. Is there anything else on legislation? Any thoughts you have? Maybe Jay, if you were going to be sitting there at that workshop in next week, what do you think, if anything, can be done via legislation? Is any of this stuff going to help?
It depends on what problem you're trying to tackle. Personally, I don't think there's a ton of issues in the market. There's definitely some, fees. You can call it an issue. It's really just an annoyance that, we see in other industries. Fraud, but I still think there's still very little fraud for the size of the industry. And, when you hear of ticket resale fraud, you never really hear about it from a large marketplace or a reputable broker. It's always, I got these on Craigslist or OfferUp, and I can't believe that somebody made 15 copies of the same PDF file and sold them all on the street. So some of that comes down to buyers, which you want to address next, which is buyers should be aware of where they're purchasing. But speaking for the secondary market, it's very much a self-regulating market. A lot of brokers are members of the National Association of Ticket Brokers, which tries to help guide us all in the right direction. And most brokers generally want to do the right thing anyways. You don't really see a lot of intentional fraud. And I know sometimes venues might see somebody show up with, two people show up with the same ticket or something. Many times that's actually an accident. It's not done on purpose. Right. And as we move to things like mobile transfer of tickets, we're going to see that type of thing, approach zero as we get rid of PDF tickets that you can take a screenshot of, things like that. So, I don't think fraud's a huge issue. I think the cases we hear of fraud is small, and it's perpetrated by bad people that would be committing other crimes if it were a different place. I personally don't think there's a whole lot of regulation that's needed. So it really depends on what problem you're trying to tackle with legislation.
Right. I think, I don't know if you guys saw the other legislation that just is on the other side of Canada, over in Ontario, and I'm not sure where they're getting at with this, but I'd like to hear what you think about it. They are proposing legislation where you would not be able to issue a ticket that is not transferable. So meaning like, the NFL doing their all digital. And also you can't do all digital. So you would have to provide a paper ticket for somebody up on demand, which I don't know what they're getting at there. But those were two things in that Ontario bill that came up that I thought were really getting their fingers in a space that felt a little weird, a little intrusive. What do you think on that non-transferable? And then also, having to provide a certain format of tickets if somebody requests it.
I think every ticket should be transferable.
Yeah, well, this would make it illegal. Oh, you're saying yes. This would make it illegal. That would be great for you then, in your opinion, because they're saying you can't make tickets non-transferable. In what situation are we seeing that, David? Are you seeing that come in at all, where they say, "I don't want these tickets to be able to be transferred"?
Not really. I mean, we don't.
I wonder what they're trying to address there.
There are some shows or bands that don't want their tickets transferred, and I think they're trying to say
there's very specific artists right now.
Oh, it's a certain artists that come in and say, yeah. Again, they're trying to get rid of what their understanding of the secondary market is, I suppose.
Yeah, but it hurts.
Yeah,
it hurts.
that's what
It hurts
doing.
the primary market too, because you might buy 4 tickets, expecting to take another couple with you, and maybe their child gets sick and they can't go. Now you can't transfer those tickets to someone else, or maybe it's postponed and you can't go to the new date because you've already got your vacation booked. You should be able to sell those tickets. Obviously, it would also help with the secondary market as well. So, you might think I'm a little biased there, but, there's just no reason a ticket shouldn't be transferable. It's imagine
and I don't disagree with
the old
that.
analogy of imagine if the government told you you couldn't sell your used car after you were done driving it.
Yeah.
Well, and
David?
let's simplify it even more than that. Where does that law, where does that reach end? I buy tickets for my parents for a present.
Right.
I have to show up with my license and credit card to, or a picture, or my picture ID goes on the ticket. Like, how do you do that? I don't see the benefit in it. I understand the want to regulate it. That seems like a direct attack on the secondary ticketing market. But I just don't see where the benefit comes in on that.
Mhm. Yeah, and I have a hard time understanding too on the, forcing people, primary ticketers as well, to say you have to deliver a certain type of ticket to somebody if they ask. I mean, I don't know. I'm always a person that thinks we should have choice, so if you can at all possible offer various formats to different folks that works better for them, then I'm all about that. In some settings, if you're the NFL and you can get by with only digital and that works, I participated as an NFL buyer a couple times last year, and it was smooth. It went really well. So people can figure that out for sure when you need to. But
certain ticket formats need to disappear. They need to die. The PDF ticket needs to die.
The PDF notes needs to go away. Agreed. And nobody has a printer anywhere. Yeah.
Needs to go
away.
A
mobile ticket, sorry?
I assume that law is aimed at the idea of, if you require everything to be a ticket that's displayed on a smartphone, you're now definitely making that, a quote luxury item, where if you don't have a smartphone, which not everybody does, they wouldn't have any way to get in. So I assume that's what that is targeted at.
Must be, and like I said, if you're the NFL, maybe you think you can get by with that. This is a Canadian law that wouldn't touch. They don't have football yet, do they? Basketball, yes. Baseball, yes. I don't think they've got a NFL team.
No NFL teams in Canada.
Right, and so I don't know if they're just preemptively sort of watching what's going on here and saying we don't want that type of thing, and maybe it is about locking people out who don't have smartphones. I don't know. It's an interesting one to watch, and again, it's a provincial law, so it would just be like a state law down here. So I don't know if that's going to go through. So. We are just about out of time, but very quickly, we can kind of combine the last couple of questions. I've always looked at Jay, what you do, secondary market, is being a distribution channel and being, something that can be friendly to primary when it's done right, so that if there's folks who just don't want to get involved in a rush for tickets or forgot to buy or something, and, you can have a reputable source. And like David, I use secondary all the time when I travel, because usually I'm going to get better seats, by somebody's season tickets, especially in sports or Broadway or something like that. But looking at the future maybe of ticketing, a lot of folks are talking about more and more distribution channels. Is that the direction we're going, like Vegas, where instead of just a primary source, whether it's a ticketing agency or white label ticketing with a venue like what you do, David, there would be a ton of online outlets that would be connected via APIs. Exactly what you do, Jay. But so that when you are buying travel tickets, hotels, credit card companies are now jumping into ticketing, secondary sites, discounters like Groupon, Gold Star, bringing the inventory to the buyer in a ton of different ways. There's a couple different opinions on that. If that's going there, is that going to just make it more confusing for people? Does Vegas have more fraud than we do because they've got so many outlets and ways you can buy show tickets? Or is that better for the consumer in the long run? You guys have any thoughts on that? And also just kind of what's ahead with that?
I think that's
I don't think
exactly where we're headed.
Okay, wait, one of you said, let's go. David, what'd you say, yes or no on outlets?
I do think that it is going to head in that direction, but I don't think that Vegas is the right model to go after. Let's face it, a casino-driven town, and we have, casinos here, in the Phoenix area as well. Their goal is people on the floor of the casino, which is why they tend to give away, the venue. So you're always going to have a full venue at a casino because it's going to put people on the floor before or after. But on the ticketing side of things, in terms of sort of this one-stop shop, or I guess it would be the opposite of that, multi-stop shopping, where you go anywhere to any number of sites and be able to get the tickets. There again, where is not necessarily the regulation by legislation, but where does the regulation come from, at all, when it comes to that?
Yeah.
Like, that I granted it may come out to, a little bit more parity across the board of how tickets are priced, but, it just seems like such a shift from the way it's always been.
Yeah. Jay, what are your thoughts on distribution?
I think that's exactly where we're headed. That's exactly why I joined this company and sold my ticket brokerage, to join a company that's offering those types of APIs to those types of companies. If you look at Europe, it works over there. London Theater, you can buy London Theater from tons of different places. Yeah. They all use APIs to reference the single canonical source. It's just the primary has not really opened that up in the US. I would love for, to get an API feed from TicketForce. I would love to get one from Ticketmaster. Ticketmaster has those. They currently only share it with, as you mentioned, I believe Gold Star, used to be Scorebig till they went out of business. I believe they do some stuff with Groupon, bands in town, they're very selective about who they allow to use those APIs. But if they made those APIs available to marketplaces and other websites, then that would help them move primary inventory, and that would also stop cases where people might be kind of speculating on tickets knowing that they're sitting at the box office. If StubHub had the seats that are remaining in the box office window on their site, people could purchase those at the face value price. because I believe like in London where the way it works is they all have to sell at the same price, but there's a commission built into the ticket fee that's available to the distribution outlet.
Right. So the winner is the one
who
gets them into.
We need to go, but I don't know that we'll ever get there because we have one large primary ticketing company here that is absolutely trying to control everything.
Yeah. Well, that's true. And we are one of the only countries, I believe, or economies that does operate sort of in this modem. You know, there are others, but there's plenty in Europe. South America has a very different model. And maybe at the end of the day, when you break that up, the revenue is more evenly shared. But getting that to happen in where we're at today, I don't know. But it's going to be interesting to see. I think APIs are definitely bringing a challenge to that. And, you know, maybe at the end of the day, that's how you'd verify maybe the actual real, you know, feed somehow. If you have legitimate primary inventory that then you're tying into, you know, maybe that is able to, they're able to add a blue check, you know, like Twitter, this is legit. So people would have something to look for. Because the more we go to that, they're going to have to know. But again, you're talking about folks that we're the country that gets caught up in fake news. And if it was on Facebook, it must be real. So maybe that's the answer for why that'll be your next question, David, when someone says, hey, I bought a fake ticket. It's like, yeah, what'd you read on Facebook last week? You know? So
we're getting a little bit of that in the U.S. You know, where what we really need is the ability to authenticate and reissue a ticket when it's sold on the secondary market, which all of this can be done via APIs. We're seeing it a little bit with there's a product, SeatGeek has their open product that they're using with the NFL, and same with Ticketmaster and their NFL, where if you are willing to pay a huge upfront fee to be a part of the club and deal with their technical issues getting established, you can sell NFL tickets that will always be reissued when you sell them. It also then passes the secondary pricing back to the teams so they can know what tickets are selling for. And, you know, we're slowly getting there. I think some people are pushing for it. I think some companies are, you know, fighting it or, you know, pretending to participate. But, you know, that's what a truly open ticketing distribution system would look like, where, you know, you would need to have some barrier to entry, but via APIs, you should be able to sell primary inventory at the prices that they're demanding. You should be able to sell secondary inventory that can be authenticated, reissued to the new buyer so that you have no issues with barcodes or anything like that. Like, all of this stuff is possible. It's just a matter of
the technology is there.
Are we ever going to get
Yeah. All right. Any closing? I think it's a great note to close on, actually, because that's, you know, something that 10 years from now, maybe we're looking back and going, hey, we did really have a market shift there. At the end of the day, we're all in the same business of getting people to the entertainment that they want to see on any particular given day and getting them in the door, and making sure that, you know, everybody participating in a way that people do know they have an authentic experience and can trust that. So good discussion. I appreciate it so much, guys. And I think we could have spent a whole webinar on each one of these questions. Would have been great, but your guys' expertise, openness, all of that, I appreciate it very much. Any closing thoughts?
I could talk tickets all day.
Yeah, I know, I can too.
I think that this is, you know, that APIs and all that, I think it's a beautiful pipe dream for us all to have, that, you know, we'd have a safe and secure way. But I think that, you know, here in America right now, you know, it's pretty rough. And, you know, I think on the secondary market and all the pricing differences and fair pricing and everything that we've talked about today, hey, as long as people are willing to pay the money for the ticket, nothing's going to change. You know, I'd like to see it go there, but as long as tickets are selling, you know, I don't see, you know, where that legislation is going to come in. You know, the study that was done here, that 2016-2018 study,
Mm-hmm.
what's the regulation that's going to come out of that? I think that the regulations are so difficult to enforce in this industry.
Somebody has to sue somebody, Yep.
Yeah, it would be a very interesting thing, and so who knows? Like you said, 10 years we may look back on this and go, wow, here's
look
that market
that.
shift. But I just, I don't know that it's coming very soon.
I know, but we do have the technology, and oftentimes, in tech, you get technology ahead of the willingness to use it in a way that's best for an industry. But as the generations shift and we get new leadership in all levels of this thing, we'll see what happens. But I think it's a fantastic conversation to have, and I want to thank you guys both for joining me today. Tim, if we can flip to the next slide, we will take a look at what's coming up. So this is this webinar / podcast will be broadcast live on Wednesday, June the 5th at 10 a.m. Pacific, and it goes on from there to 1 p.m. on the East Coast. So the next webinar that we have is on Wednesday, June 26th. And speaking of APIs and customer experience, we're going to be talking with Martin Gramelkoft, and he has a service that connects to primary ticketing that is basically kind of like, I like to call it AI, for kind of marketing and data and customer behavior. It's a really interesting one. So don't miss that. Martin is fantastic. He talks well about customer experience, and we'll be chatting with him just not even a month away on Wednesday, June 26th. And I know our one following that will be broadcasting live from the International Venue Association Conference in Chicago. We'll be on the trade show floor there live. And we're going to do a product reveal of our new content hub for everybody and everything ticketing, which is where this podcast will live at the end of the day. So thanks very much to the listeners. Thank you, Jay Cobb, Ticket Evolution, David Cruz, City of Phoenix. I appreciate your guys' time very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.